Clint Eastwood and John Wayne are giants of the Western genre. In Western movies, they were both typecast. Eastwood as the brooding loner with little to say, and Wayne as the morally upright man seeking to right wrongs, keep the peace, and settle disputes. The films they made were quite different, although still within the broad Western category. Each man was critical of the other's work, with John Wayne especially finding Eastwood's films not at all to his liking. In their personal lives, they were also opposites. Wayne held conservative right-wing views, while Clint Eastwood held more liberal views, and in 1986 won election to be mayor of Carmel, California. In this video, we're going to outline the careers of both of these great actors and establish why they were so reluctant to work on films together. John Wayne. John Wayne, real name Marion Robert Morrison, was born in Iowa but moved to California where the warmer climate would be better for his father's health. John was a promising football player and secured a place at USC to study law and also play football. Unfortunately for the team, John broke his collarbone body surfing and had to give up his football career. The silent film star Tom Mix regularly attended USC football games, and as a favor to the coach, hired John as an extra and prop boy. Director John Ford used John for bit parts in a range of early movies. John was 18 at the time, and his career was to span more than 50 years of filmmaking. John was tall and with an athletic physique. It was this that caught director Raoul Walsh's eye. He cast John in his first leading role in The Big Trail, which was released in 1930. Walsh and Fox Studios head honcho Winfield Sheehan met and decided on a new name for John. They felt he needed a professional name that was snappy and uncomplicated, and chose John Wayne. The man himself was not even there when his name was decided. The Big Trail was the first film of its kind in the sound era and cost more than $2 million. Commercially, it was a flop, but it had set the standard and today is considered a classic. It also introduced John Wayne as a Western actor. He followed this with nearly 10 years of appearing in low-budget Westerns, generally referred to as horse operas or Poverty Row Westerns. John himself reckoned he had appeared in over 80 of these types of films. He became a household name after co-starring in Stagecoach with Claire Trevor. This film was released in 1939 and was an enormous success. The critics loved it because of its high production standards, and the accountants loved it because it made a large profit. One of John Wayne's biggest regrets was that he was unable to enlist in the U.S. Army during World War II. His draft was deferred several times due to Republic Pictures opposing it. He was under contract to Republic and was the only A-list actor on their books. He was able to tour U.S. bases in the South Pacific and did some undercover work for the Office of Strategic Services, later known as the CIA. He did credit his patriotism in later life to the guilt he felt for not being able to play a bigger part in the war effort. In the post-war years, John began to choose roles he wished to play, often making his choice on patriotic or moral grounds. He refused the lead in All the King's Men because he thought it promoted un-American sympathies. He also refused a role in The Gunfighter because he felt he had been treated badly in the past by Harry Cohn, Columbia's boss. Gregory Peck was handed the role. Over the next 20 years, John Wayne appeared in more than 20 John Ford-directed films. One of these was The Searchers, which many believe to be John's best film, and the role that showed his scope as an actor. Over his career, Best Actor Oscar success eluded John. He had a nomination in 1949 for The Sands of Iwo Jima, and then won the Oscar in 1969 for The Alamo. In 1976, John appeared in what was to be his last film role, the Western The Shootist. He developed stomach cancer and died from it in 1979. While he divided critics during his long career, John was considered by many to be a master of his craft. Clint Eastwood. Born in 1930 in California, Clint Eastwood had a privileged childhood, as he came from a fairly well-to-do family. He was no academic, partly because he was having too good a time away from school in his teens. He was sometimes in trouble for pranks and left school possibly without graduating. He held a variety of jobs as a teen, including paperboy, golf caddy, and lifeguard. At 21, he was drafted into the Army during the Korean War, but served out his time in Fort Ord, California. At one point, he begged a lift on a Douglas AD bomber that was returning to base from Seattle. The plane ran out of fuel and crashed into the ocean, and Clint and the pilot had a 2-mile swim back to shore. While at Fort Ord, Clint was put in touch with director Arthur Lubin, who auditioned him on behalf of the Universal International Film Company. There followed a number of years where he only managed to get minor roles on TV and low-budget films. His big break came in 1958 when he was cast in the TV series Rawhide as Rowdy Yates. Rawhide ran from 1959 to 1965 and established Clint as a household name. He found the role of Rowdy, who was a real goody-goody character, rather limiting. He jumped at the chance to act in A Fistful of Dollars when it was offered. This was the first of Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns, in which Clint created the character of the man with no name. He played the same character in For a Few Dollars More and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Initially released in Italy, then the rest of Europe, the films were not released in the US until 1967. The critics were disparaging in their reviews of the films. Today, they're considered classics, but for many critics, they were too far removed from the run-of-the-mill westerns they were used to reviewing. In 1968, Clint starred in Hang 'em High, a revenge western which did gain the approval of the critics. He followed this success with a number of non-western films like Coogan's Bluff and Where Eagles Dare, before taking the lead in Dirty Harry, which is probably his most iconic role. Clint's career continued with a mix of westerns and non-westerns, including Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, The Outlaw Josie Wales, and 4 more Dirty Harry films. In 1992, Unforgiven was released, which was directed by Clint. It garnered 9 Oscar nominations and won 4. Clint took Best Director and the film took Best Picture. Another critical success was The Bridges of Madison County in 1995, alongside Meryl Streep. In 2003, Mystic River, which Clint directed, earned 2 Oscars and a nomination for Clint as Best Director. 2004 brought more success with $1 Million Baby, which he also directed. It won 4 Oscars, including Best Director and Best Picture. Clint, at 74, became the oldest director with 2 Oscars for Best Director. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure you give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And stay tuned to hear about the beef between John Wayne and Clint Eastwood. Why John Wayne and Clint Eastwood never acted together. Both men are classed as Hollywood megastars. Both are closely linked with westerns, although they both acted in thrillers, action movies, and romantic films too. So why did the two greats not see eye to eye? It's been suggested that John Wayne felt threatened by Eastwood. Clint represented a changing landscape in westerns. John felt secure in the types of roles he was playing, and when the spaghetti westerns came along, it marked a major departure from that style. Wayne actually turned down the opportunity to play Dirty Harry. At one point it seemed John Wayne was just behind the curve and struggling to catch the new mood in Hollywood. In response to Dirty Harry, he made McHugh, and in response to Coogan's Bluff, he made Brannigan. Neither was particularly successful. Maybe this attempt at copying Clint's successful films was a sign he was jealous of the younger actor. In 1973, Clint wrote to John and offered him a role in High Plains Drifter. Wayne rejected the offer as he felt the film did not represent the American West as it had really been. Later, Clint suggested the rejection came because John was making a different Western with Don Siegel at the time. In High Plains Drifter, Wayne saw an attempt to degrade both the American West and the Western movie. He just couldn't accept that the kind of behavior represented in the film would have occurred in the real Old West. In 1973, when Clint was preparing to film The Hostiles with Larry Cohn, he felt it would be a good idea to ask John to play one of the leads. John said no, although he didn't give a reason. Clint even went to the length of changing studios in an attempt to get John to change his mind, but no luck. John just replied with a critique of Clint's earlier films. This was the nearest they ever got to starring in the same movie. John Wayne knew Clint Eastwood would likely become the greater star. He was not one to wish the upstart well, but resented his success. Eastwood certainly eclipsed Wayne as a director, although much of his success came after Wayne's death in 1979. John Wayne held right-wing political views. He also expressed racist views and tried to justify the grabbing of Indian land in the 19th century. He was a staunch Republican. Clint, on the other hand, held more mainstream views. He supported both Republican and Democrat candidates based on their personal qualities. He also held public office from 1986 to 88 as mayor of Carmel, California. It seems John Wayne and Clint Eastwood's rivalry was mostly because of Wayne disliking Eastwood's approach to the Old West in his movies. Wayne clearly resented the rise of Eastwood as a star and was perhaps jealous. Over the course of Clint Eastwood's more than half-a-century-long career, he's appeared and directed more films than the average person can likely recall. He's won 5 Academy Awards and even created his own production company. This company, known as Malpaso, is responsible for producing most of his films. The actor and director certainly likes to do things his way and was once even the mayor of a town. Clint's strong will has caused him to butt heads with numerous celebrity figures, including director Spike Lee. Lee notoriously criticized some of Clint's directorial choices regarding the latter's pair of World War II features, Letters from Iwo Jima and Flags of Our Fathers. According to Spike Lee, various races weren't represented in the film in a way he felt was historically accurate. In return to his criticism, Clint told Spike he needed to shut his face. Spike apparently took the loss, and the two have since made up. Clint also got into a public feud with documentary filmmaker Michael Moore. After the release of Clint's hit directorial effort American Sniper, Michael took to social media to inform people he didn't feel that snipers should be portrayed in a positive light. According to him, American Sniper glorified snipers, and he took specific umbrage with this due to the fact that a sniper had killed his grandfather while fighting in World War II. Audiences certainly didn't agree, as American Sniper was a box office success. The feud between Clint and Michael apparently came to a head when the two were trapped under the same roof for a National Board of Review event. As legend has it, Clint announced in front of the audience that if Michael Moore ever came to his house to perform one of the documentary filmmaker's notoriously candid interviews, Clint would take the opportunity to shoot him. Though the audience initially laughed, Clint scolded them and declared he was being serious. Clint has since denied that this event took place, but not without agreeing that shooting Michael would be a good idea. Michael was apparently stunned by the event and hasn't picked any fights with Clint since, especially not with cameras rolling. While the two previous people on this list have since made up with Clint, our next example is a celebrity who hates Clint that's content with being hated back. This is Red Hot Chili Peppers bassist Flea, who took to social media to disparage Clint after the elderly director made some remarks that Flea found inconsiderate to other races. Clint had been speaking on the matter of political correctness, which he views as being detrimental to entertainment. According to Clint, things that didn't used to be considered racist now are, and he doesn't like that. Clint went on to insult the generation of people that he feels is responsible for this type of cultural behavior. While Clint didn't name any names while disparaging this entire nondescript generation of people, there was one person who took issue with the statement. This was Flea, who proceeded to blast Clint on social media. According to Flea, Clint's remarks were detrimental to the human race's ideological evolution. Clint never made any public response to Flea's statements and likely has no idea who Flea or the Red Hot Chili Peppers are. Our next celebrity maintained a much more personal and deserved grudge against Clint Eastwood. This is Sandra Locke, who lived with Clint for over a decade while the two were romantically involved. Their relationship was both personal and professional and ended in turmoil. Clint escaped his and Sandra's relationship relatively unscathed, but the same can't be said for her. The two became involved while filming the 1976 film The Outlaw Josie Wales. After that, the pair moved in together and proceeded to star in 5 more films together before their messy and hectic separation. According to Sondra, their relationship took a sour turn as soon as she expressed interest in developing a career outside of Clint's films. Although Clint helped produce her 1986 directorial debut Rat Boy, Sondra blamed her new artistic venture for causing Clint to lock her out of their house. Clint was able to get away with this by claiming Sondra was simply an occasional roommate. Sondra attempted to sue Clint for palimony. They ended up settling the case out of court, with one factor being Clint getting Sondra a production deal as a director with Warner Brothers. But this production deal was revealed to be a scam when over 30 scripts submitted by Sondra were rejected. She then sued Clint once again for fraud, though that case was settled out of court as well. Sondra maintained her grudge against her former lover until her death, expressing during her final years she wished she had spent half as much time with Clint as she did. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure you hit the like button, and be sure to subscribe to Facts First if you haven't already. If Clint Eastwood treats his lovers anything like he treats his actors, it's no surprise Sandra Locke grew to hold a massive grudge against her former partner. Clint Eastwood has rubbed many of the actors he's worked with the wrong way, including such affable and legendary figures as Tom Hanks and Leonardo DiCaprio. These actors worked with Clint only one time, in Sully and J. Edgar respectively. Although both films were critical successes, their stars have expressed they weren't at all comfortable behind the scenes. Tom Hanks likened Clint Eastwood's approach to handling his actors to that of a cowboy handling cattle. This seems like an apt metaphor given the fact that Clint rose to prominence acting as a cowboy in numerous westerns. Still, Tom wasn't meaning to pay him a compliment. According to Tom, he was constantly afraid that Clint was going to give him one of his signature glares on set, a look meaning Clint wasn't happy with the performance. Tom has also shared that Clint wasn't the only intimidating figure on the set of Sully, with the real-life figure behind the story acting as an on-set consultant. That was, of course, Chelsea Sullenberger, and he and Clint were constantly butting heads about creative decisions during filming. Chelsea apparently scolded Clint on an occasion when the director showed up for filming over 20 minutes late. While Clint isn't afraid to play the tough guy when it comes to other Hollywood players, real tough guys like Chelsea Sullenberger have been able to earn the director's respect. DiCaprio had similar feelings when working with Clint for the biographical film J. Edgar. Although J. Edgar Hoover himself wasn't an on-set consultant, the filming was apparently fairly stressful for DiCaprio. Leo was later lined up to star in Clint's Richard Jewell, but decided to step down. Although J. Edgar was a success, it wasn't successful enough to warrant Leo subjecting himself to another set that was being run by Clint Eastwood. By the 1970s, Clint had made somewhat of a name for himself as an up-and-coming Western star. Some critics even saw fit to compare him to a young John Wayne. Although Clint may have been flattered, John Wayne wasn't. In 1975, Clint released his first self-directed Western, High Plains Drifter. The film was decidedly darker than the average Western at the time. It featured many amoral characters, including the titular one played by Clint himself. Although plenty of audience members were receptive to the notion of a darker Western, John Wayne saw the film and disliked it immensely. He disliked it so much so, he immediately went home and began writing Clint an angry letter. The letter expressed John's feelings that Clint was disrespecting the pioneers of the past by depicting the West as a time and place that was sinful. Clint laughed it off. According to Clint, he understood where John was coming from, but felt it was a difference in the outlooks of their two distinct generations. While John's films were seeking to glorify the pioneers of the West, Clint's were looking to use the aesthetic of the Western to tell a more general fable. Margaret Johnson. Though Clint certainly had romances before meeting and marrying Margaret Johnson, she marks the first prominent woman he had a relationship with during his adult years. The two met in the summer of 1953 after being set up on a blind date by mutual friends. Margaret was working as a secretary at the time, and Clint was hard at work becoming a star. Clint and Margaret met and married in 1953 and divorced in 1984. Over the course of their 3-decade marriage, the two had a pair of children, Kyle and Allison Eastwood. Although they were married for that time, that doesn't mean Clint stayed dedicated to the mother of those two kids. Clint and Margaret reportedly maintained an open marriage, with Clint engaging in numerous affairs. The pair became legally separated in 1978 before divorcing. Jayne Mansfield. There were many women Clint Eastwood was rumored to have engaged in extramarital relations with during his marriage to Margaret. The first was Jayne Mansfield. Though the rumors have never been substantiated, it's been claimed that Clint and Jayne hooked up in 1954 when Clint was a fledgling star. Mamie Van Doren. If the affair between Clint Eastwood and Jayne Mansfield was just a rumor, the affair between Clint and Mamie Van Doren could be seen as a verifiable fact. The two met while filming Star in the Dust, and they quickly hit it off. Roxanne Tunis. Clint met Roxanne Tunis in 1959 while they worked together on the hit TV series Rawhide. The affair went on to last for many years, with them being romantically linked until 1973. They had a daughter named Kimber in 1964. Anita Loest. While Clint was cheating on his first wife Margaret with dancer Roxanne Tunis, he was also having an affair on Roxanne Tunis with a professional swimmer named Anita Loest. Clint and Anita were romantically linked from 1959 to 60, during which time Anita became pregnant and had an abortion. Keely Smith. Jazz singer Keely Smith is another figure who became tangled in burgeoning star Clint Eastwood's tangled web of affairs during the 60s. They were romantically linked for a short period in 1961. Jill Banner. From 1964 to 65, Clint had an affair with cult actress Jill Banner, who later married Marlon Brando and died tragically young at 35. She is best known for performing in the 1967 film Spider Baby. Catherine Deneuve. In 1966, it was reported that Clint Eastwood was having an affair with French actress Catherine Deneuve, known for her work in films like Belle de Jour. Inger Stevens. Over the course of the 60s, Clint Eastwood broke out into international superstardom thanks to his appearances in a variety of spaghetti westerns. Later in the decade, he returned to America and featured in the 1968 American revisionist western film Hang 'em High, in which Clint starred alongside beautiful actress Inger Stevens. Clint couldn't help himself from starting yet another affair when he began working with the actress, becoming involved with her for a full year in 1967. Gene Seberg. A year after the release of Hang 'em High, Clint could be seen in another western, during the filming of which he hooked up with his female co-star. That film was Paint Your Wagon, which also happened to be a musical. Clint got to stretch his musical chops in the film, which is perhaps how he won the heart of co-star Gene Seberg. The two hooked up while filming the feature in '68. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Facts First for more, and stick around for more of Clint Eastwood's affairs. Gael Green. While most of the women Clint Eastwood has hooked up with since becoming a superstar have been fellow celebrities, Gael Green represented a change of pace. She was sent to interview Clint while he was filming the 1970 feature Two Mules for Sister Sarah. They met in 1969 and the affair lasted until 1970. Joanne Harris. In 1970, Clint Eastwood began a long-lasting affair with actress Joanne Harris, whom he'd met while filming the feature The Beguiled. The affair lasted from 1970 until '72. Kathy Regan. In 1971, Clint was cheating on his first wife with Roxanne Tunis with Joanne Harris, and Joanne Harris with Kathy Regan. At the peak of his virility, it appears the actor needed 4 women to keep him satiated, though Clint appeared to only have needed French model Kathy for a small period of time in 1971. Sandra Locke. The affair between Clint and Sondra Locke remains one of the most scandalous that Clint has ever been involved with. The two began dating in 1975 after meeting on the set of the film The Outlaw Josie Wales. They remained together for many years, though were never married. Clint and Sondra remained romantically involved until 1989, but it has come to light in recent years that this relationship wasn't necessarily a happy one. According to Sondra, Clint forced her to get 2 separate abortions. Clint also quite literally left Sondra out in the cold, locking her out of their shared residence and getting rid of all her belongings in the process. Sondra ended up suing Clint twice as a result of their tumultuous relationship, though they settled out of court. Megan Rose. While Clint was having a hard time with Sandra Locke, he found solace having an affair with Hollywood story analyst Megan Rose. Megan introduced Clint to the script that eventually became Unforgiven. Their affair lasted from 1983 to '87, and Clint went on to film Unforgiven and released it to immense acclaim in 1992. Jamie Rose. Clint became entangled in an affair with actress Jamie Rose in 1983 after meeting her on the set of the feature film Tightrope. Jacqueline Reeves. Jacqueline Reeves is another person Clint cheated on Sondra Locke with. They became involved in 1984 and ended up having a couple of children together, Scott and Catherine. Sonia Braga. Sonia Braga and Clint dated for a time in 1989 after meeting during the filming of The Rookie. Barbara Minty. Besides Sonia Braga, Clint Eastwood was also romantically linked to model Barbara Minty in 1989. Barbra Streisand. Barbara represents a third person Clint dated after breaking up with Sandra Locke, being the most famous of the bunch. Jane Cameron. Clint dated TV actress Jane Cameron in 1989, making her another addition to the actor's list of romantic rebounds after Sandra Locke. Danny Crane. Danny Crane marks the last of the many women Clint briefly dated in 1989 after breaking up with Sondra. Frances Fisher. In 1990, Clint Eastwood met Frances Fisher while filming Pink Cadillac, and the two became romantically involved for a number of years. They separated in '95 after having a daughter named Francesca in 1993. Dina Ruiz. Clint started dating Dina Ruiz while he was still living with Frances Fisher, and the much younger woman went on to become his second wife. The two married in '96 and didn't divorce until 2013. In 1996, they had a daughter named Morgan. Erica Tomlinson Fisher. While preparing to divorce his second wife, Clint began dating a photographer named Erica Tomlinson Fisher. They dated from 2012 to 2014. Christina Sanders. The last person Clint is known to have hooked up with is Christina Sanders, slightly older than both of Clint's previous hookups, but still more than 3 decades his junior. Christina was a hostess working in Clint's town of Carmel by the Sea, California, when Clint came in and asked her out on a date. All directors have different styles, and some directors are easier on their stars than others. When it comes to directing films, Clint Eastwood likes to do things fast and efficiently. This means his actors and actresses are typically encouraged to get things right on the first take. Since all actors and actresses have different workflows, this can prove disastrous for some of the stars on the set of Clint's films. One such star who has fallen victim to Eastwood's rigorous demands is Matt Damon, who starred in Clint's 2009 feature Invictus. Invictus was a biographical drama about the events surrounding the 1995 Rugby World Cup. In the film, Morgan Freeman portrayed South African President Nelson Mandela, while Matt Damon portrayed the captain of the South Africa Rugby Union team called the Springboks. Of course, Matt's character had to have a South African accent, something Matt doesn't naturally have. It took him a while to perfect the accent, and he wasn't totally sure he had it down when it came time to film. But Clint was adamant the actor had to get his work done in just a few takes. According to Matt, Clint's method of directing led to the use of several takes the actor wasn't completely happy with his performance in. But Matt went on to express he still believed Clint was a great director and had confidence in his vision. Matt's confidence paid off, as his performance in Invictus ended up netting him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Still, Matt prefers to do a few more takes when he's the one in charge. Clint has become notorious for encouraging his actors to get their performances right in 1 or 2 takes. According to Clint, doing more than that is a waste of everyone's time. And Clint likes the rawness and spontaneity he feels actors and actresses bring to the first take. In his eyes, too much rehearsing can ruin the human element of a scene. Many directors like to spend numerous days filming single sequences, while Clint feels this kind of schedule can lead to low morale in the crew. According to Clint, it's good for the cast and crew to feel like things are always moving. Besides Matt Damon, another actor who has found himself the victim of Clint's rigorous demands is Tom Hanks. Tom portrayed Chelsea Sully Sullenberger in Clint's hit 2016 film, Sully. The film was based upon the real-life incident in which the pilot became a hero by successfully landing a crashing plane and saving over 100 people. The film marked the first time that Tom had ever worked with Clint, although both had been beloved Hollywood figures for decades. According to Tom, the experience was a little bit intimidating. Tom has said he felt Clint treated him like cattle on the set of Sully, which makes a lot of sense given that Clint rose to fame on film as a cowboy. Clint has said a lot of his directorial experience has come from watching the directors on the set of the TV series Rawhide. And Clint was apparently enamored of the on-set wrangler's abilities to deal with the show's livestock. Clint considers himself a wrangler of his actors and actresses on the set of his films, and that experience can be daunting for them. According to Tom, Clint could communicate what he wanted with a simple, disapproving look. Tom apparently began to fear this look while working on the set, but Clint wasn't the only intimidating figure on the set of Sully. The real-life hero was a fixture on the set as well. He was brought onto the film early on in an advisory capacity and continued this role throughout most of filming. When the real-life Sully was on set, he apparently had plenty of input to give to the cast and crew. But Clint didn't always warmly receive this input, given that he was the director. As rumor has it, Clint and the real-life Chelsea Sullenberger butted heads numerous times. The real-life Sully always felt he knew what the best way to handle a scene was, while Clint trusted his own vision more. Clint had also experienced what it was like to be on a crashing plane, as he had suffered an infamous plane crash years before that nearly killed him. But Clint has never been forced to heroically pilot a crashing plane to safety. Regardless of the tension between Clint, Tom, and Chelsea himself, Sully turned out pretty good for all involved. The film was a major success with both audiences and critics, with particular praise being heaped on Tom's performance and Clint's direction. And the real-life Chelsea Sullenberger received more fame and recognition than ever before for his heroic deeds. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like, and subscribe to Facts First for more. Creative decisions weren't the only thing that divided Clint Eastwood and Tom Hanks on the set of Sully. The movie was filmed and released in the year leading up to the 2016 election. That election was perhaps the most volatile the country had experienced, and Clint and Tom had found themselves on opposing ends of the political spectrum. Clint has always been one of Hollywood's unlikely Republicans and has even dabbled in politics himself as mayor of Carmel by the Sea, California from 1986 to 88. Given that Clint has always found himself on the conservative side of the political spectrum, it wasn't too surprising when the famed actor and director came out in support of 2016 Republican nominee and eventual victor Donald Trump. However, this put Clint in direct opposition with most of his Hollywood brethren, including Tom Hanks. Like most of Hollywood, Tom was an adamant supporter of Hillary Clinton. However, Clint and Tom were able to brush this off for the most part on set and keep things professional during filming. Tom isn't the only person who's been put off by Clint's political ideologies. Clint has made public remarks about his political beliefs that have rubbed many people the wrong way, including documentarian Michael Moore. The two infamously became embroiled in a feud, which culminated in Clint jokingly threatening to shoot the famed documentarian during a speech. Clint has had much to say about the so-called era of political correctness, which he believes to be a detriment to both the country and to Hollywood filmmaking. Despite Clint's intimidating demeanor, the director has expressed he strives to make his cast and crew feel comfortable on the set of his films. Despite the occasional hiccup, it appears he typically accomplishes this. Even Matt Damon and Tom Hanks were satisfied with how their performances turned out in Invictus and Sully, even if they had qualms while they were being filmed. Clint's decision to work fast on his films is one of the reasons the legendary actor and director is able to take on so many projects. Most of his films are released to wide acclaim, so it doesn't seem as if the director is suffering by only allowing his stars a couple takes. Still, it's understandable that his unique directing methods might not jive well with all the actors and actresses on his sets. In addition to his efficiency, his amicable relationship with Warner Brothers has allowed him to stay active over the years, working at a rate that makes most other filmmakers envious. He's maintained a working relationship with the studio for decades, and they've come to allow the director an unprecedented amount of control over his films. If working on the set of Clint's films is difficult, imagine how difficult it must have been for his son, Scott Eastwood. Scott has appeared in several of his father's films, including 2012's Trouble with the Curve and 2008's Gran Torino. Although working with his father on set was certainly tough, Scott has expressed it was an incredible learning experience. He's learned a lot from his father's work ethic, although he has since preferred to star in films helmed by other directors. He recently appeared in 2021's Wrath of Man from director Guy Ritchie. Clint Eastwood's $6.1 million legal victory. In early October 2021, Clint Eastwood and Garapata, the company that manages the rights to his likeness, were awarded $6.1 million after winning a lawsuit against a sketchy Lithuanian company named Mediatonas UAB that was allegedly using Eastwood's image to sell their line of CBD products. The company even went as far as to publish a fake interview with the 91-year-old actor and director to make it seem like he was actively endorsing their products. Eastwood and Garapata filed 2 lawsuits in the LA federal court against 3 manufacturers and marketers of CBD products that were referenced in an online clickbait-style article that claimed Eastwood was endorsing their products. Eastwood's legal team focused on a fake interview with an outlet that masqueraded as The Today Show. The article even included a photograph of Eastwood making an appearance on the NBC program. In the article, there were affiliate links directing customers to purchase CBD items. Mediatonas UAB never responded to a summons in March, which led U.S. District Court Judge R. Gary Klausner to submit a default judgment. Eastwood and Garapata were thus awarded $6 million, plus nearly another $100,000 in attorney fees. Mediatonas UAB was also hit with a permanent injunction banning them from using Eastwood's likeness again. Eastwood's request for defamation damages was, however, denied, because to prove his case, there would have needed to be additional context information to fully understand what CBD products are and why Eastwood would not endorse such cannabis-derived products. The judge ultimately concluded the text in the clickbait article wasn't overtly libelous in nature. Eastwood celebrated his legal victory by telling the New York Post he was not only satisfied with the court's ruling, but he also further felt like the judgment sent a powerful message to would-be online scammers to reconsider their approach before trying to illegally use someone's name and reputation to sling their wares. Eastwood's lawyer, Jordan Sussman, also noted the case was an example of the star making sure no one could use his name without his permission to turn a profit. But this wasn't the first time Clint had to defend his name and honor in a public court. Over the years, he's faced multiple legal battles head-on, and for the most part, he's been victorious. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Facts First for more, and keep watching to learn about 2 other lawsuits Eastwood has had to fight against. Clint's car ramming case. A woman named Stacy McLaughlin filed a $100,000 lawsuit against Eastwood after alleging he repeatedly and intentionally rammed her Nissan Maxima with his quarter-top pickup truck in 1988 while in the parking lot of Warner Brothers Studios. Allegedly, Eastwood went ballistic after Miss McLaughlin accidentally parked in his parking space. Municipal Court Judge Marion E. Gubler ended up ruling in Eastwood's favor in August of 1991 and ordered McLaughlin to pay for Clint's legal fees. Eastwood argued he was merely attempting to park his vehicle in his rightful space. He ended up paying $960 to repair the headlights and bumper of McLaughlin's vehicle. She tried to get more money out of him for punitive damages while claiming Eastwood acted maliciously, and while the judge agreed that what Eastwood did was, in fact, morally wrong and illegal, he did agree his actions weren't egregious enough to warrant punitive damages. In court, Clint Eastwood's attorney, Denise D. Gorges, argued that McLaughlin's lawsuit was motivated primarily by greed. Sandra Locke's lawsuit. Sandra Locke was an Oscar-nominated actress who frequently starred in films alongside Eastwood. She passed away at the age of 74 in 2008 at her home in L.A. This was after losing a battle to bone and breast cancer. Locke and Eastwood entered a domestic partnership in the fall of '75. She had first met the actor and director in 1972 when she unsuccessfully attempted to lobby for the title role of his 1973 film Breezy. They became romantically entangled, however, while on location in Arizona during the filming of the 1976 Western The Outlaw Josie Wales. Sparks flew, and according to an interview Locke gave in 2012, they ended up sleeping together on their first date. After production wrapped in December of 1975, the couple bounced between Eastwood's 2 estates in Sherman Oaks and Carmel, California. They were also frequently seen at his rental properties in San Francisco and Tiburon. They eventually settled at Eastwood's property in Bel Air, which Clint ended up selling in 2016. But what started out as a storybook romance eventually turned sour. While the couple remained together for 13 years and appeared in numerous films together, their relationship deteriorated as the years went on. According to Locke, she wanted to branch out into the entertainment industry and build her career beyond his films. When she expressed this desire to him, Eastwood was infuriated. By 1989, it was clear their relationship was beginning to crumble. Eastwood was clandestinely seeing another woman on the side and had 2 publicly unacknowledged children with her. At the same time, Locke claims she had 2 abortions upon Eastwood's insistence over the course of their relationship. Their troubles finally came to a head one April day when Locke returned to her and Eastwood shared home while she was filming Impulse to find that Clint had changed the locks and put all of her clothes and belongings in boxes. Locke ended up filing a lawsuit against Eastwood. In his defense, he claimed Locke was merely an occasional roommate for the last 10 years. They ended up settling the suit, with Locke being awarded a 3-year, $1.5 million deal with Warner Brothers Studios to develop her own directing projects. But as the years dragged on, Locke's deal didn't really end up going anywhere. Between 1990 and 93, Locke's lawyer, Peggy Garrity, claimed she had proposed approximately 30 films to the studio. Everyone ended up getting turned down, so Locke decided to file another suit alleging that Clint Eastwood had purposely defrauded her and the studio deal was essentially a sham. Terry Semel, the CEO and co-chairman of Warner Brothers Studios at the time, responded to her accusations by saying the deal never guaranteed that any films would be produced and that Locke was free to take her projects to other studios. Clint testified in court he had felt victimized by his ex-lover. He said she felt like she was committing social extortion or blackmail. The suit was settled privately in 1996 for an undisclosed sum. After she was awarded her victory, Locke told the press she felt like it had sent a loud and clear message to the entertainment industry that people can't simply get away with whatever they want just because they have power. She went on to direct 2 more films after Impulse, Death in Small Doses and Trading Favors, both of which failed at the box office. His early life. Clint Eastwood was born May 31, 1930. His family moved 3 times in the 1930s before settling in Piedmont, California, in an affluent area of town. He went to Piedmont Middle School but was held back for poor grades and attended summer school. He was kicked out of another high school and transferred to Oakland Technical High School. It's unclear if he ever graduated. He tried various odd jobs, including lifeguard, paper carrier, grocery clerk, forest firefighter, and golf caddy. He tried to enroll at Seattle University in 1951, but was drafted into the Army during the Korean War. He was a lifeguard at Fort Ord his entire time there. He was honorably discharged in February 1953. How he became the world's richest cowboy. Clint's debut role was in 1955's Revenge of the Creature. It was a sequel to Creature of the Black Lagoon. That was only the beginning. It took a lot of failed auditions and dealing with criticism for his acting style to get his career started. His first major success was when he joined the cast of Rawhide in 1958. He wasn't satisfied with the childish character he played, but the show was a hit. It reached the top 20 in 3 weeks and peaked at number 6. The schedule was grueling. He often filmed 6 days a week for 12 hours a day. It was canceled in the 1965-66 season. He earned $750 an episode and got $119,000 at the end as severance pay. He first attracted theater-goers as the man with no name in 3 Sergio Leone films. They originated the genre of the spaghetti western. The first one was A Fistful of Dollars. It only earned him $15,000, which would be around $126,000 today. But he enjoyed every moment of it. He was finally doing something new after 3 years on Rawhide. He relished the insanity of the language barrier with his Italian director. He also appreciated how Sergio was willing to try new and almost satirical methods of filmmaking. He was offered $50,000 for the sequel, but almost didn't return for the third. He almost lost out to Charles Bronson, but came back and earned $250,000. His career only grew from there, and now spans more than 6 decades. A few of his most notable roles were Dirty Harry, as well as his role in $1 Million Baby and Gran Torino. He's a multi-award-winning director and actor. He got 2 Academy Awards for Best Picture and Best Director for $1 Million Baby and Unforgiven. His children. Clint has also amassed a large family over the years. He won't exactly own up to how many children he has, as there are questions over whether certain people are his offspring. Let's go over some of his kids. Lori. Lori was originally placed for adoption. Clint didn't know about her, and she was born while he was still in high school. They reconnected years later, and it's unclear what type of relationship they have. Kimber. Kimber briefly pursued acting in films like Passion Crimes and Crossed, as well as her father's films. She's now switched her attention to being a makeup artist. She's been married 3 times, has 1 adult son, Clinton, and married her current husband, Sean Midkiff, in 2014. Kyle. Kyle studied acting, but later realized music was his passion. His father's been supportive. He watches his son's band, and they've even written a few songs together. Kyle married Laura Gomez in 1995 and had a daughter, Graylin Spencer. They divorced, and he married Cynthia Ramirez in September 2014. Allison. Allison had bit parts as a child before studying acting at University of California. She had a fruitful career after appearing in Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. She followed in her father's footsteps and began directing as well in 2007's Rails and Ties. She married Stacy Poitras in 2013 and retired from acting in 2014 until returning for Clint's 2018 film, The Mule. She now has a clothing line and a nonprofit animal rescue called the Eastwood Ranch Foundation. Scott. Clint encouraged his son Scott to be healthy and made him earn everything he got. He also had to audition for a role in Gran Torino. That led to other films like The Longest Ride, Snowden, The Fate of the Furious, Pacific Rim, and Suicide Squad. Clint also encouraged Scott to start directing. He's had high-profile relationships, but struggled with dating since losing his girlfriend, Jewel Brangman, in a car accident in 2014. Catherine. Catherine Eastwood was named Miss Golden Globe in 2005. She began acting in 2014's Jersey Boys. Francesca. Francesca was also named Miss Golden Globe in 2013. She starred in the E! reality show Mrs. Eastwood and Company. It followed her life with her stepmom Dina and sister Morgan. Morgan. Morgan has worked in front of and behind the camera since Mrs. Eastwood and Company ended. She acted in $1 Million Baby and Changeling. She was the executive producer and acted in the short film I See You. Real estate. Clint has spent a large portion of his portfolio on buying real estate. His portfolio includes a variety of properties around the globe. They include a 6,100 square foot mansion in Bel Air, a 1,000-acre ranch in Bernie, an apartment in Burbank, a 1.13-acre manor in Hawaii, and a 5,700 square foot home in Idaho. These are only a few examples. They're great cushions if his children should ever need a place to live or if he suddenly finds himself in need of money. His vehicle collection. Clint spent his early years in westerns riding horses. He loves nature, but also has a passion for modern transportation. Just consider films like Gran Torino. He's one of many celebrities, like Jay Leno, Lady Gaga, and David Beckham, who have a large collection of cars they can admire or take out whenever they want. Clint's collection of cars is one of the most extensive and impressive. It includes a Ford Roadster, a Lincoln K-Series convertible, an Austin Healey, a Cadillac Eldorado Series 62 convertible, a Jaguar XK150 Roadster, a Gran Torino, a Morris Mini Countryman Cooper S, and a Fiat 500e. He's not satisfied with staying on the ground either. He's purchased more than one helicopter, which he can ride himself because he has a pilot's license. Nothing can keep the cowboy down, whether it's in his career or in his travels. Giving back. Clint doesn't hoard all his money or spend it all on fancy toys for himself. He also uses it to give back to those in need. He and his business partner, Andy Williams, invested heavily in purchasing a plot of land in California. They hoped to build 90 homes there and sold them back to the public in 2019. This makes sure the community has homes, but the partners also want to preserve the rest of the land. They want to turn it into a 2,000-acre nature reserve. Andy said he and Clint were worried that if they didn't step in, the land would become a congested mess or go uncared for. They hope it will have enough economic value to be self-sustaining. Clint Eastwood Jr. had no plans to become an actor. In 1953, the man's handsome and rugged looks played a key role in fetching him a contract from Universal. He did small parts until 1958, when he got his big break with the American Western TV series Rawhide. During the 60s, in an attempt to make the move from TV to films, Eastwood traveled to Italy to be a part of spaghetti westerns. He played the role of Man with No Name, a role that had been turned down by several western stars, in Sergio Leone's 1960s trilogy series, which included A Fistful of Dollars in 1964, For a Few Dollars More 1965, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly 1966. These films played a key role in establishing Clint Eastwood as an international star. During the 70s, Clint Eastwood accepted the role of Harry Callahan in Dirty Harry, which not only led to several sequels and spin-offs, but further cemented Eastwood's position as a mega movie star. In the years that followed, Eastwood achieved fame and success by conquering different genres and directing Academy Award-winning films, such as Unforgiven and $1 Million Baby. In this video, we tell you 15 Clint Eastwood facts to blow your mind. For instance, do you know why Clint Eastwood decided to call his production company Malpaso Productions? Or why he turned down some of the most iconic roles in the history of cinema? In this video, we'll answer those questions. So, sit back and enjoy. He was drafted into the U.S. Army during the Korean War, but was never part of the combat. Clint Eastwood worked several odd jobs before becoming an actor. After graduating from high school, he first worked as a firefighter in Oregon, then moved to Texas to work as a steelworker. He also worked as a lifeguard and gold caddy. In 1951, he decided to go back to studying and was planning to enroll at Seattle University. However, he was drafted instead into the U.S. Army and sent to Fort Ord in California for training. Clint was never a part of the combat and instead worked as a swimming instructor during the day and a bouncer at night. He survived an emergency plane landing during his Army days. In 1951, Eastwood had gone to Seattle on a weekend leave. While coming back to Fort Ord, the actor decided to hitch on a Douglas A-D, a torpedo bomber that was used during World War II. During an interview years later, he recalled this trip as being one of the scariest experiences of his life. As soon as the bomber took off, the radio and oxygen went out, and they soon found out they had run out of fuel too. The bomber made an emergency landing at Point Reyes, California, which is known to be a white shark breeding ground. Clint, however, survived the whole accident. Clint Eastwood wrote to Billy Wilder to convince the director to give him the role of Charles Lindbergh. Eastwood got his big break in 1958. However, by 1953, he knew he wanted to be an actor. So in 54, he wrote to the popular director and screenwriter Billy Wilder, who was often considered one of the most versatile filmmakers of all time. Eastwood thanked the director for finding the time to meet him and requested the director let him audition for the role of Charles Lindbergh. Unfortunately, Billy Wilder decided to go with Jimmy Stewart. His contract with Universal lasted until 1959. In 1953, Eastwood was hired by Universal as a contract player, an agreement that lasted until 1959 when he was fired for a few different reasons. So what were they? To start with, according to Universal, Eastwood had a chipped tooth that he refused to take care of, and he talked too slow for an actor. The funniest reason they gave, however, was that Eastwood's Adam's apple protruded out a little too much. Along with Eastwood, Universal also fired Burt Reynolds the same year. The reason? According to the studio, Reynolds couldn't act. Clint Eastwood took home $15,000 as fees for A Fistful of Dollars. The role that made Clint an international star was the role of Joe, or the man with no name, in Sergio Leone's A Fistful of Dollars. And Clint Eastwood has James Coburn and Charles Bronson to thank for the opportunity. The role had first gone to Coburn, who demanded $25,000 to star. Charles Bronson, on the other hand, thought the film was one of the worst scripts he had ever read. Eastwood loved the script and decided to do the film for $15,000. Clint Eastwood went against his agent when he decided to accept the lead role in A Fistful of Dollars, a decision that proved life-changing. The actor is known to follow his gut and heart, which is why it's not surprising he's also turned down many incredible popular roles during his career. We'll give you more details on this in a minute. Meanwhile, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to our channel. He wore the same poncho in all films of the Dollars trilogy. Many of us will remember Clint Eastwood as the man with the poncho and a cigar-smoking icon. So here's a mind-blowing fact about the poncho that played a crucial role in making him such a huge star. He wore the same poncho in all 3 movies of the Dollars trilogy and never washed it once. An interviewer once asked him why he never washed the poncho, and the answer was simple. If he did, the poncho may have fallen apart. Eastwood still has the accessory with him. There's a reason why Eastwood named his production company Malpaso Productions. Clint Eastwood's production company is called Malpaso Productions, and there are 2 reasons why he gave the company this name. First, when Eastwood was approached for the role of the man with no name, his agent told him the trilogy was a, quote, bad step. Bad step, translated into Spanish, is Malpaso. Second, Eastwood lives in California by Malpaso Creek, and hence the name Malpaso Productions. Eastwood has Sinatra to thank for the role of Harry Callahan. Harry Callahan is another one of Clint's most memorable roles. Not many people know that the role was first offered to Robert Mitchum and Steve McQueen before finally going to Frank Sinatra. However, one day out of the blue, Don Siegel called Eastwood and asked him to play Harry. When Eastwood asked what happened to Sinatra, Don shared that Sinatra had a problem with his hand and therefore couldn't hold a gun. The 1973 Academy Awards were awkward for both Eastwood and Charlton Heston. During the 1973 Academy Awards, Charlton Heston was supposed to do the opening segment. However, on his way to the ceremony, Heston got a flat tire and was late. The organizers asked Clint Eastwood to fill in for him. The situation got pretty weird pretty soon, as the entire script was filled with Heston references. Thankfully, Heston arrived before the end of the segment and took over from a very awkward Eastwood. He did all his action scenes in the Iger sanction. Clint knew from the very beginning he would eventually want to be the man behind the camera. He made his directorial debut with Misty for Me in 1971, and then in 1975, he directed the action thriller film The Iger Sanction, a film about a history professor and former assassin who's blackmailed into coming out of retirement to do one final task. Clint starred in the film. For a particular sequence, he and some of the crew members were first taken to an elevation of 12,000 feet and then lowered down using tether lines. All the stunts you see in the film were quite dangerous to perform, and Eastwood could have gone with a stunt double, but he chose to do all his scenes on his own. Also, while directing, Eastwood does not do second takes. With Unforgiven and $1 Million Baby, Eastwood has proven he's as brilliant a director as he is an actor. However, not many people know that when Eastwood directs a film, he doesn't like doing second takes. Similarly, he doesn't say action or cut. He simply says, let's move on, because according to Eastwood, the sound of action makes many actors nervous. He was his town's mayor between 1986 and 1988. Eastwood has made Carmel by the Sea in California his home. During the early 80s, he had proposed a plan for a small building, which the local administration rejected. He felt disrespected by the administration's decision and therefore decided to run for office. He ran for mayor in 1986 and won by defeating the incumbent candidate by a significant margin. During his term, he did several amazing things, the most important being repealing the law that prohibited people from eating ice cream on the streets. Until 2002, he was the proud owner of the largest hardwood tree in America. Eastwood is the proud owner of a blue gum eucalyptus that had the distinction of being the largest hardwood tree in America. However, in 2002, the title was taken away from Eastwood's tree and given to another blue gum eucalyptus. Transcendental meditation has helped him calm down over the years. During a 1975 episode of The Merv Griffin Show, Eastwood revealed he had practiced transcendental meditation. Many years later, in 2013, while talking to GQ, the actor confessed that he meditates twice a day and has been doing so over the last 40 years. According to the actor, the habit has helped him calm down in life and become more accommodating of other people's beliefs. He's turned down many iconic roles. In 1969, Sean Connery left the 007 franchise and the role of James Bond was offered to Clint. Not just the role of James Bond, but Warner Brothers also asked him to play Superman. However, he declined both roles. Why? Simply because he didn't think he was fit for the part. In 1979, he also turned down Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now because he didn't want to spend 16 weeks in the Philippines. 1932 Ford Roadster. Even though he grew up in a wealthy area of California, young Eastwood didn't study very hard at school. He preferred to hang out with friends and make the rounds at local jazz clubs, all the while holding down a series of short-term jobs, including working as a lifeguard and golf caddy. Because of this, he was never able to afford his childhood dream car, a Ford Roadster hot rod. But later in life, after achieving success and wealth, he was finally able to indulge in his childhood aspirations by sourcing himself that long-desired Roadster. 1937 Lincoln K-Series convertible. In the 1982 film Honky Tonk Man, Eastwood portrayed a Great Depression-era Western and country singer who embarked on one last cross-country tour of the nation with his nephew after being diagnosed with tuberculosis. The car Clint drove in that movie was a gorgeous 1937 Lincoln Model K convertible, which featured a V12 6.8-liter engine and was originally unveiled in 1931. The car came to be the manufacturer's crowning achievement during that era, and to this day, it's highly sought after by collectors. Sadly, at the end of Honky Tonk Man, Clint's character ends up dying from TB, but while making the movie, Eastwood enjoyed driving that Lincoln so much, he couldn't resist buying one for himself to add to his ever-growing collection. 1955 Austin Healey 100M. After making a splash following its debut at the 1952 Motor Show and making a follow-up appearance in the Le Mans 24 Hours a year later, Austin Healey's stunning new sports car managed to achieve a cult-like following. Donald Healey ended up slapping the 100 on its name to draw attention to its top speed, but that didn't stop the manufacturer from introducing a new and improved high-performance iteration in 1955. The 100M had a tighter suspension, produced 110 brake horsepower, and was deeply loved by both Clint Eastwood and Steve McQueen. No doubt Clint paid for his with the earnings he made in the role of Rowdy Yates in Rawhide. 1955 Cadillac Eldorado Series 62 convertible. In the spring of 1953, Eastwood agreed to go on a blind date with a secretary named Maggie Johnson, and it went quite well. The two young lovebirds ended up getting engaged of October of that year and were married 2 months later in December. 2 years after tying the knot, they welcomed a 1955 Eldorado into their lives. Both Clint and Maggie loved the car immensely. Sure, it might not have been a child, but Eastwood undoubtedly still saw it as his baby. With its 270 horsepower engine, sleek tail fins, and $6,286 price tag, she sure was a beauty. More than 3 decades later, while quite possibly reflecting on a few fond memories made in that car, Eastwood appeared in the film Pink Cadillac, a comedy about a bounty hunter and a band of neo-Nazis who were searching for an innocent woman. The movie admittedly wasn't that great, but the 1959 Pink Cadillac DeVille featured in it almost made it worth watching. 1960 Jaguar XK150 Roadster. After acquiring that Austin Healey, Clint ended up getting his hands on another classic Brit roadster, the Jaguar XK150. The vehicle was produced between 1957 and 61. Eastwood evidently loved his more than most of the other cars he had in his collection, the Healey included. There were only 9,385 of them ever produced, so Clint was lucky to snag one when he did. The car features a 3.8-liter engine under the hood, capable of producing 220 bhp, and was actually the last of the company's original XK lineup to ever be made. Eastwood was so obsessed with his car he even ended up including it in the first film he directed, Play Misty for Me. 1966 Morris Mini Countryman Cooper S. In 1966, John Cooper was able to recapture the magic that made his Mini Cooper S such an iconic vehicle when he put out the Morris Mini Countryman. The Countryman was equipped with all the racing gear that the Mini Cooper S featured, but in a mini station wagon form factor. Eastwood loved his, especially since there weren't many others like it. In fact, it's said that only 6 were ever produced, 2 of which were rumored to have been once owned by Steve McQueen. The Cooper S Traveler, as it was also known, was originally only offered to customers in white, but they were offered a respray in any color they wanted. Clint opted to paint his British Racing green. 1966 Ferrari 275 GTB. Following the profound success of Sergio Leone's spaghetti western films A Fistful of Dollars and For a Few Dollars More, Eastwood was convinced to appear in the final chapter of the Dollars trilogy, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Before agreeing to sign on, however, he was apprehensive. So to sweeten the deal and ensure his participation, the Italian production company offered him a higher salary. After declining that offer, Eastwood was offered a share of the profits. Still, Clint held his ground. Finally, they made him a tantalizing offer that he couldn't refuse, presenting him with a brand new, right off the factory line Ferrari 275 GTB. And while we can't say for sure that's how things actually unfolded, that's the version of the story that's been repeated over the years, so we're going with it. Alternatively, however, it's been suggested that Eastwood was gifted the Ferrari by producer Dino De Laurentiis as a not-so-little thank you for appearing in his film, The Witches. Regardless of how he added it to his collection, it's obvious that Clint was delighted to finally have his very own Italian luxury sports car. Back in the day, the 275 GTB was cutting edge. It featured a Pininfarina-designed body and a 300 HP engine. Unfortunately for Eastwood, despite having a lot of fun with it, he didn't end up holding onto it. Today, the car is worth upwards of $1 million. 1972 Gran Torino Sport, his collection. 1974 Ferrari 365 GT4 Berlinetta Boxer. After developing a taste for Italian sports cars, Eastwood bought a Ferrari Daytona Group 4 race car that he let his buddy Paul Newman race for him. Wanting another Ferrari of his own, Eastwood purchased a 365 GT4 Berlinetta Boxer, Ferrari's first 12-cylinder car with a mid-mounted engine. Clint loved the car, but couldn't stand its roof. So in 1978, he removed the roof, turning it into a convertible of sorts. In 1985, however, he sold it to make room for other additions to his collection. 1992 GMC Typhoon. A few years ago, while making an appearance on Jimmy Fallon's The Tonight Show, Clint was asked what car he prefers driving. The then 85-year-old replied by saying he usually drives a GMC Typhoon that's, quote, out of production now. It's a high-performance SUV put out in 1992, and it came equipped with a beefy V6 engine that could go from 0 to 60 in 5.3 seconds. Only about 4,700 of them were ever produced. 2014 Fiat 500e. While Eastwood has always been a fan of the classics, that doesn't mean he isn't also interested in contemporary vehicles. Clint has been spotted zipping around Los Angeles in an all-electric Fiat 500e. It might be hard for some to accept that Dirty Harry would be caught dead driving a teeny-tiny, eco-friendly car, but it's the truth. At the end of the day, he's Clint frickin' Eastwood. He's more than earned the right to do what he wants. Now it's time to hear from you. Have you ever seen any of these cars in person? Let us know in the comments section below.